We're live. We're ready to go. Okay then, let's get underway. Good morning, everyone. And firstly, thank you for taking time to be with us today for this very important, very interesting session on recognizing opportunities in adversity and navigating your business amidst the pandemic for SMEs. This event is brought to you by KSK Land in partnership with Leadernomics and Common Ground. So thank you very much for your support for everyone. My name is Roshan and I'll be moderating today. We will take a few minutes to get to know the topic a little bit better and understanding how can entrepreneurs identify opportunities in times of continual change. And what are the elements that entrepreneurs can focus on and into that in a short while? And at the same time, what are the advantages of having a plan for dealing with adversity? With that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers today. And I'm not going to go into great detail of who they are and where they went to school and how long they've been working for. But of course, John Kwao, the CEO of KSK Group and the MD of KSK Land, is one of our speakers, and Roshan, Thiran, the founder of Leadernomics, are both here to get us through this first session. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Thiran and let you kick us off and get us underway.
Sure. I was asked to talk a little bit about adversity and understanding the whole issues that SMEs, especially smaller businesses, struggle with during this pandemic. But as I was thinking about it, one of the things that I really think is very interesting for us to understand is that many of the issues in many of our organizations are not a direct result of the pandemic. We probably have seen, because of what has happened in the world, because of all the triggers that has happened, because of the slowdown, many of the things that we were not so good at, or the things that we had issues with, has become accentuated and almost become larger than life. So I give you an example in my own personal business. We have a big training arm. That's the bulk of our revenue, that we go out and do trainings and services and so on and so forth. And over the last couple of years, I have been saying, guys, we need to relook at what's happening, because you can see, even though we were very steady, maybe a bit of growth happening, but when I look at the mix of customers, I started to see something interesting. Customers are spending less, but we're getting more of them. So we're winning. We have a better market share, but what's happening is spending is going down in those spaces. And so those things alarm me. And so a couple of years ago, I decided we needed to go big in digital. And so we invested a lot into our digital space about 4 years ago, but no traction. But the pandemic, right, suddenly allowed things to become very clear to a lot of folks, that we were sending people for training. Sometimes it was because it was not that it's necessary. Sometimes it's more of, it's a reward for my guys to get a day off work and do stuff like that. And so those things are not sustainable. What you want to have is real learning that's sustainable. And so if you start looking at every business, right, you will start to see that the trends, or may not have been so drastic where suddenly 90% of your business just disappears, but those things happen. Now, what happens when you suddenly see a drastic drop, or a sudden drastic issue that compounds your business? One of the things that I think we tend to forget as leaders in companies is that whenever there is adversity, whenever there's obstacles, whenever there is something happen to somebody, right, I call this the grief cycle, right? And this happens in organizations. Where imagine that you are a person and you meet somebody and you attach to that person, or you feel, I like that person, and you start dating and you get excited, and over years you decided, let's get engaged, let's get married, and suddenly you are bonded with that person. Now, somehow something happened, there was a separation, right? The person was taken away, boom, there was a separation. Now, what happens usually to most people is that you start to grieve, right? And you feel upset and angry and sad, and you're in a state of denial, and it goes up and forth, right? Meaning you sometimes feel angry, and then you get sad, and then you go into denial, and then you go back angry, and you go sad, and it keeps going up and down, right? Until you come to a point, which you all know, is you come to a point of acceptance. And acceptance is a combination of do I feel grateful for having had that person, and am I forgiving, right, for whatever issue that happened? And then you then come to a point of acceptance. Now you get to reattach with something else. Now, typically in many organizations, right, whenever we have and happened in mine too, right, whenever we suddenly had huge revenue loss. And so what happens is, as bosses, we say, oh, we need to pivot. We need to take drastic actions. We need to change our structures. We need to change the way we do business. We need to change basically a lot of things in our organization in a very quick manner. Now, what happens typically is many employees, right, suddenly feel, oh, there's a change of structure. Now, you remember, you get bonded to a structure, and suddenly there's a separation. Before, this was your territory. Now you've changed territory. Oh, and so then employees start to go into a sense of denial, anger, bargaining. No, 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 it's not right. This, you'll go back in 6 months' time. Things will go back in 3 months' time. It'll go back. And we refuse to accept and to reattach to the new way of doing things, right? And so what happens if you think about a team? Suddenly you say, okay, we need to change the team slightly. Take the boss and put it somewhere else and put somebody else and restructure. So suddenly I'm attached to my boss. There's a separation, right? And they go into this curve again. And it takes time for them to come to accept. So what happens many times in organization, especially in times of adversity, is that we see the organization have a lot of infighting. But that infighting is actually dictated by this grief, the fact that they have not overcome the grief. And organizations can grieve too. Teams can grieve. Divisions can grieve, right? And so what happens is that if we do not work hard enough to try to overcome this grief cycle organizationally, what happens is we go into chaos, we go into anarchy, we go in and we don't understand why is this happening, right? And sometimes we just have to let time do its trick, because after a while you realize, oh, the new boss is fine. Oh, I'm comfortable in this. I get more comfortable in the new territory. You allow time to for that healing to happen and that grieving to happen. But sometimes we need to work to accelerate that healing, that change that happens. Now, if we don't get this right, what happens is that in most time the change that we try to implement doesn't get implemented or doesn't get implemented right. And so this is one of the biggest struggles I find in both big and small, especially in smaller organizations, because we tend to get very comfortable with our customers, with our status quo, with our constitutions, with our stakeholders, with the way things are being run. Oh, this is how it is. In the good old days, right? But the reality is what COVID, I think, has done is started to say that the world is going to change and it's not going to be the same anymore, exactly like how it was. So we say, 2021 now, 2022. I remember it was start, in about a month's time, in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time. Now we're seeing wave 2 coming. Countries have wave 3, and it's gonna. And when the antidote comes, or when the vaccine comes, everything's gonna be back to normal, right? But I was talking to a friend of mine. He we play badminton on and off, and he was saying, it's very strange. Every Monday, I look forward to going to Pasar Malam, right? This was pre-COVID, right? And then he said, but I the last 6 months or 3 months, or I have not gone to a Pasar Malam. And now Monday night came and I forgot already what it was to go to Pasar Malam, and I didn't bother because I'm getting my groceries from the big giant grocery stores and so on and so forth, right? And he's like, I guess that's it for Pasar Malam. So now think about it. If you're a Pasar Malam vendor, and what habits have changed because of what has transpired over the last 6 months, right? And I think the reality is that things are going to be different, and the faster we can accept that. But that doesn't mean that we accepting it doesn't mean your organization is going to, because the organization is going to go through some form of grief, right? How we help the organization overcome this grief and be able to get to a point of acceptance and forgive and be grateful for the past, and be able now to say, how do we really reposition ourselves with a new dream, with a new future, and then be able to try to figure out how to get to that vision. So with that, I'll open with those thoughts just to.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much, Roshan. I'm also going to ask now Joanne to just give us a quick heads up on what KSK has been doing in the last few months. And Roshan was mentioning the words digital change and future. What does it mean at your organization?
So it was actually very interesting to listen to what Roshan was saying, because that is mm, I think property businesses, those in industries that today are currently we take it upon ourselves to, in KSK we have a saying is that change is constant, and we like change. We always try to educate and also allow our people to come in with a mindset and culture that change is positive and don't be afraid of that change. It's like what you say. This whole process of going through grief, it's similar in nature. So taking on from our experience, we started, incubating a lot of, we have 2 tech startups that we incubated, and along the way through our journey, we learned this agile way of working. I think some of, people have already heard about it. And it started off with software development companies. And what we did was today, we took upon the agile way of working and started implementing it across our whole property development company. In fact, actually, our traditional sort of, what now today we call the traditional organizations, right? And we started that our journey about a year ago at KSK Land. And it was quite an interesting approach, because if you know the agile way of working, it means that everybody in the cross functions are all collaborating together in different squads, right? So that we can actually move a lot faster, so that we're closer to customers, we're closer to the change and the trends that are coming. I don't believe that it was just COVID that actually changed the way people work. It excavated it, but change was always going to be there. It's evolution. It's the way, every time when we have something injected into our ecosystem, we change our habits. Habits take about 3 to 6 months to change according to research. And so every time there's a new technology, and when we take it on, the way we live, the way we consume media, the way we do, the way we live our lives are all changing. And businesses then have to actually adapt with that change. But how do we do it? So when we discovered the agile way of working, this whole test, learn and iterate approach, except that we don't do it in 1 year cycles, like business planning. We used to do business plans like 5 years business plans. Today we throw that out of the window and we said, okay, what's our 3-year business plan broadly? What's our 1-year business plan? That's our goal that the entire company wants to go towards. But we work in 2-week iterations. Actually, in fact, because of COVID and because everything is excavated, we now work in 1-week cycles. The entire company, all 100 of us. And what that means is that whenever we test something, we come back to the table in little squads and we say, okay, what have we learned? Failures, we celebrate. We call them failure festivals. We celebrate the learnings that we've taken on, the good and the bad, and then we discuss this in retrospect. And then we go back out and we iterate again. And that's the beauty of how we continue this journey. And everybody then has this persistency or this, tenacity to actually continue. Because sometimes when you have, like what you say, when you go through this whole grief up and down cycles, you get very tired. So how do you actually make people interested in going down this motion? And when you start to do this, what we discovered is that when we came back and share learnings and going through this whole retrospect, we found a lot of opportunities as well. And the opportunities don't come from the leaders alone. It actually comes from everybody, the teams on the ground, because everybody has their role to play. And I think that really is true opportunity. And when the pandemics like this, this is not the first crisis that we've gone through. Personally, I've gone through like, I think 2 crises now. One is the Lehman Brothers crisis, and one is now the pandemic. 2 very, very different crises. One is very, very quick. One is an extremely slow burn. Both, what I've seen so far is that both we actually discovered a lot of opportunities when things slow down.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanne. Now, Roshan, taking what Joanne was saying, and we're looking at SMEs today. Now, you both run different organizations. You both have the opportunity to change in a sense, if you don't change, you're dead. What can SMEs learn? And I want you to touch on the grief cycle. Now, are SMEs grieving before they are dead in this crisis? Are they closing shop before they have to? What's going on in your mind in terms of what can SMEs do?
So actually, I don't think, I mean, sometimes we grieve for different things. And sometimes it can be insignificant things, right? I mean, your pet hamster passes away and you grieve and it affects you in many, many different ways. But I think what we as SMEs need to start thinking about is four things that to me are very, very critical, right? So the first thing is that I call this alignment, right? So what's alignment? Alignment is having your personal clarity of three things that are very, very critical. The first thing is, what's the vision? Right? So is the vision still intact? So ask yourself a question. You know, my vision is to build this organization to do this. Is the vision still intact? Ask yourself the question. If it's not, what's the new vision? Right? So have clarity, and I call this vision clarity. That means that every single person in your organization must have an alignment of this is the vision. The second clarity that needs to happen is reality clarity. Okay, so what's reality? Real, no, because I mean in Malaysia many times we say, oh, we're a very modern country, you know, because we got the tallest building previously and so on and so forth. But the reality is we got places in Sabah Sarawak with no electricity, right? So I mean, we the reality is not, you know, we think we're here, but actually we're down here. So once you have the vision, once you have the reality clarity, then comes the mission clarity, which is what should I do to get there? At least what's the first step, right? And what's the key result? So that's alignment. Now the second thing you question is, what's my business model? Right, so the straight away, you know, we sat down as a team and said, okay, what's our business model in Leadonomics, right? Is it going to work? And is it something that even if the crisis goes away, is it something that is sustainable long term, right? And so you start questioning your positioning, your pricing, your everything about your business model, your go-to-market strategy, right? So alignment number one, number two, business model. Now, once you have that clear and say this is the business model going forward, right? Then you start to build your organization accordingly. And two things are needed. One is structure, because people behave according to structure. So if you structure your policy this way, people will behave this way. If you structure this person reporting to this person, they will behave accordingly, right? So structure and your systems, your processes, that's structure. Now this is predicated on your business model, which is predicated on your alignment, which is my vision, my reality, and how I need to get to that vision, right? Then the last thing is culture. And culture are beliefs, right? So, and this is the part where we struggle with, because inside every organization, there are beliefs that are dictating your results, right? So if you believe you're small, so I was doing some work with a bank, and this bank said, oh, we are a small bank, you know. So I said, okay, that's good. I said, no, whenever, you know, a big bank comes in, we run away, right? Because we're small. I said, what do you mean? My company, we also think we're small, right? We have 70, 80 people. I mean, we're small, right? But for us, small means we're better, we're smarter, we are more agile, we can get things faster, we serve you better, right? So completely different understanding, and that's belief, right? So many organizations have deep-seated beliefs that are dictating how they behave post-pandemic. And the idea is understand what those beliefs are and try to work on producing new experiences that will eradicate those beliefs and create new beliefs. So if you work on those four things, right? And I give you a quick example. If you think of Darth Vader in Star Wars, right? Why is it that the Empire can never win, right? I mean, they try, right? So very simple, you know. So firstly, I don't know what's the vision, right? Maybe it's just to rule. You know, it's driven by one person ruling.
They're evil.
Okay, so we'll skip that. Let's go to the business model. The business model very simple. Let's build a Death Star to wipe out the rebels. And if it fails, let's build a bigger Death Star to wipe out the rebels. And let's build a bigger one, right? So the business model, even though it keeps failing, they keep going back to the same old business model. Now, what kind of structures do they have? You know, simple. One guy goes to the top and chokes people. And what kind of culture? What kind of culture do they have? The culture is, oh, if I get my boss killed, I take over, right? So the number 3 guy is saying, oh, if I get my boss, who's number 2 to Darth Vader, you know, in trouble, he will get killed and I will take over. So my culture is to kill my boss, right? So what happens is, if you start to look at almost anything, right, you can start to look at alignment, business model, structure, and culture, and you can see why businesses fail. And SMEs are the same. If you look at your own business, why do you fail, or why are you struggling, or why are you going to die? You may not need to die, right? Because if you relook at your business model, another great example is Marvel, right? They were dying until 97, and somebody came and said, look, what's our business model actually? And as they started to realize, hey, actually, our business is about, we are a talent agent. We have 5,000 talents, 2,000, 3,000 superheroes and 2,000 villains, right? So I need to be a talent agent and market my Spider-Mans and my Iron Mans and so on, and get movie studios to use my talent, right? And when they understood what the business model, they built structures and a culture to supplement that, right?
Exactly, and most people alive today will not know that Marvel produced comics, books that no longer, if you want to get them, you have to buy them for like thousands of dollars, So it's interesting. Now, Joanne, recently there was an announcement in the media recently. KSK has started to do stuff with SMEs during this pandemic, which most people thought like, well, how is KSK going to do this? You decided to create an accelerator program for SMEs in the food and beverage sector. Why are you doing that?
So I think first, I think for KSKLand, we're a lifestyle developer, and what we believe is, we're not building brick and mortar. We have to understand what our customers want, and what are they doing, and food and F&B is everything to us. I mean, if you ask a Malaysian what they like, the first thing they'll tell you is something to do with food. If you ask a Malaysian what to show their city, the first thing they say is, have you eaten this or have you eaten that? So everything, food is a part of life. It's a part of the way we anchor our communities on, or at least have a reason so that we can go out and meet and socialize and communicate. And I don't think this will ever go away. I think it will evolve, but it will not disappear. And so for our debut development with Aconlay, we pre-COVID actually, we decided that we wanted to do a food hall. And then, like what Roshan said, right, this is another example of it, is that then the COVID came, and then there was this whole talk about fears of, F&B, a lot of people are closing down, your best hole-in-the-wall eateries are going to close down, and so on and so forth. But our business model was very simple. We wanted something where we said, hey, we have to find a way to actually partner up with all these F&B. We cannot just be landlord and tenant relationship. That does not work. And when COVID came, that was really what everybody was talking about. Whether it was rent-free or not rent-free, but that doesn't mean that a particular F&B business was going to be there forever. Even if you give rent-free, that does not mean that we would put that relationship together. So coming from our tech experience, there's something called inspired innovation. What I like to always encourage with our people as well is that whenever we go out, we look at things not only in our industry, but also things outside of our industry. Can we learn something from them? Can we get inspired from them? That's at least how we get inspired in all the businesses that we do. So again, we went through this whole brainstorming session, and we sat down with the team and we said, so how do we survive together with the F&Bs? How do we take it one level above and not just survive, but have conversations with them? And then it took me back to this moment where, I've started KSKLand, and we've started 2 tech startups now, and every time it was a very lonely place whenever we start a business, because you always want to brainstorm something, you want to bounce ideas off, you want to have shared learnings, which we really believe in KSK. So I said, okay, coupled with the experience of running, tech startups, we had this opportunity to be exposed to tech accelerators, and I was just telling the team and saying, why do we have tech accelerators but not accelerators in every other industry? What stops us from doing so? And the beauty about accelerators, and the reason why we wanted to do this, was, to offer a couple of things, right? One of it was really mentorship programs, and the other one was really technical services that we would provide, which we realized, when we did our startup, we were like, all these corporate services that you're supposed to do, why are you doing it? No, it's very difficult. It's not a lot of SMEs would want to do it. That's number one. And number two is they want to feel like they belong in a community where they can actually learn together. And so we wanted to create that. I think money is very easy to give as a corporate, but shared learnings and a platform to give, I think that's what Leadernomics is also about. It's very difficult to come by. And the ability to actually put these things together is very powerful. because that's something that we have actually gone through, and we appreciate that, and that's something that we wanted to give back. And so we started this Platter Accelerator program, which I think some of my team will actually be introducing about at a later stage.
Well, I hear a few key words, if I was to be the Google search engine of this discussion. I hear the word culture, I hear the word food, I hear the word teamwork. Now, how are SMEs who are kind of under the pump right now, how are they going to kind of break out and disrupt their own behavior, and what learning can they make? I'll ask you again, Joanne, what can they take away from your experiences, and how can you add that mentoring program? And then Roshan, I know you do a lot with mentoring, you do a lot around community. How has this kind of become a convergence of kind of post-COVID-19 good corporate behavior? What is going on there?
For me, I think taking on from the pandemic experience, I mean, when it hit, we were looking in the company, and I think like what Roshan was talking about, I think the key word for us is about focus. When crisis hits, people tend to stray because there's so many things happening. It's chaos everywhere, like what Roshan says, and then we have this tendency of just trying to put out fires everywhere. But it's easy to do that. It's harder to sort of pull back and say, okay, now what is the real focus? Go back to the basics. What is your business dynamics? What is your business model? What are we here to do? How do we then, the answer is how do we actually create a sustainable business, right? One that actually continues to last. So I like structure. So in KSK, what we started to do is, this thing called the 4 Cs that I have. The first C is actually cash flow preservation. I mean, in every business, whether you're big or small, the first thing you look at your cash flow preservation. The second one I look at is actually cost consciousness. And why I say cost consciousness and not cost cutting, because I think sometimes you have to spend in order to actually survive. And so we look at cost consciousness from a question of, how do you, what are these cost implications versus what is actually value creation for you? These 2 Cs, cost consciousness and cash flow preservations, are actually defensive mechanisms that every business will then, it's a grind, middle of the grind, you just have to go through it, punch your numbers in and go through it, and everybody has to do it, right? And then I like to say in every crisis there's an opportunity. So the other 2 Cs is actually, one is actually about capabilities. Whether you're a big company or whether you're a small company, you need to then look internally first, look at your people. What are they doing? So with capabilities, it's all about looking at your people that you already know and telling them, hey, if there is this point in time, there's always something to learn. How can we upskill ourselves? How can we reskill ourselves? I think that is very, very important, because whenever a crisis hit, everybody tries to look outside first. They forgot to look inside. You need to have a stable ship. And it's not just you, the leader, but it's also about your company, that everybody is stable. Mentally, they're okay and they're calm. And that's what we do with capabilities, right? We took our time during KSK Land, we took our time to actually, for people who are all staying, working from home, we would actually find opportunities to actually upskill our people, reskill our people, look at new collaborative tools, how do we actually use them, all the, what in we call ourselves the tech noobs. Some people are tech noobs, they are now no longer tech noobs, and we celebrate that as well. Because I think every single little thing that we do, we as a hurdle that, they feel that, oh, okay, this is a mindset shift for me, or this is a habitual change for me. We should celebrate that. More so during a crisis. Because then you can actually feel together. That's culture, at least culture for us. And the last C is really about confidence restoration, both internally and externally. So for us, internally, it's all about communication. A lot of times with small companies, they also believe that, hey, we're very small, we already know each other. We're already communicating with each other anyway. That's not really true, because communication, we take it for granted. What is effective communication, especially in a business organization? So for us, during a crisis, we feel that, okay, then we need to communicate even more. We have to tell people, okay, how are we doing? How are you doing? Personally, or how are we doing as a business? Be even more transparent than we used to be. That's confidence restoration internally. confidence restoration externally also means looking at white spaces, looking at opportunities. And what does that mean? It means looking at spaces where if you understand your business very well and you understand your industry very well, you're looking at spaces where people have not done it before. Or you're looking at, things that people are doing, but they're not doing it effectively. So how do we disrupt that? And these things, believe it or not, are even more prevalent during a crisis. Because when things are all fine and dandy, those are the times of fine and dandy. You can't really see these breaks in the market. But in every crisis, you will then see all these breaks in the market. And you can either say, I want to shy away from these breaks, or you can either say, hey, I think this is an opportunity. Let's do even better. Let's push the boundary a little bit more. And that is not just, and then the next question is, okay, I've identified this. It's a problem to solve. Do you solve it alone or do you solve it together with a team? So I think that's at least in KSK Land what we deployed as it's something called the 4Cs, and we continue to think about it all the time. 2 as defensive mechanisms, and 2 as more like an opportunity building. And even during the crisis, apart from Platter Accelerator, which we then brainstormed and created internally, actually we found an opportunity to do something called the Innovation Accelerator Challenge. So now every month when we have a problem to solve and we really cannot solve the problem, we make it as a pitch challenge. Anybody, whether you are in the construction site as engineers or whether you're in the office as marketing, there's a problem to solve for the company. So let's solve this problem. It could be a creative problem. It could be a new idea. We just finished a TikTok challenge and I just realized the entire company, 100 people are very, very creative. I don't think we need to hire any creative agencies anymore. They started doing this TikTok challenge and we enjoyed ourselves. And the winner gets to celebrate, and we utilize this actually now into our businesses, and we deploy them into our businesses. And we tell our people who came up with those ideas, you are setting a legacy for yourself in the company, and also a legacy for the company.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for those insights, Joanne.
Yeah.
Roshan.
Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat that because I think that those are good insights from Joanne on, especially on the how do you pivot your business. But I want to talk about 2 things. I mean, I'll just talk a little bit about our story. So one of the things that we realized is that we needed to morph into from a learning development organization or a training company into an intelligence organization, because I think data and intelligence is what helps you make the right decisions. And so we started looking around at our customers and we realized there are 2 pieces that we don't do so effectively. The first one is learning, and you talked a little bit about it, but the reality is that most of us worldview is predicated on our Facebook feed and our LinkedIn feed and so on and so forth. And so we don't really have truly a diverse worldview, and we're learning things that we think we need to learn, not necessarily what we need to learn or what we should be learning. Right? So that and the problem is learning has shifted, where in the past you would go to a course and then you'd wait and then you'd hopefully use those skills, in 3 months' time, in 4 months' time. Now you need to learn just in time, because when the problem comes, you need the learning to be there to solve the problem, right? But we're not built to do that, right? So more and more we started to challenge and say, how do we help organizations to learn just in time? Because you do that anyway. When you have a problem, you Google and say, what can I do? And then you solve a problem. But why can't we give you the right learning at the right time, the right place, right? So that piece is a challenge. And we realize that many organizations are not learning organizations. And we need to help organizations make that transition, because if you really think of how am I going to pivot, how do I be creative, how do I try to get into a new space, how do I become like Marvel and understand my core capabilities, like you mentioned, Joanne, you need to have some sort of deep learning and continuously, and you need to be unlearning stuff, right? So we talk about learning, we forget about unlearning, because there's a lot of things that the world is round, the world is flat, all these things will stop us from learning something new because we are stuck with this old mindset, right? So there's an unlearning part that needs to be embedded in. Now the second piece, so the learning is one piece, and so we started to say, how do we build tools? So we created a tool called Nicole that is really game changing. How can we curate all the world's information and give you just in time what you need at the right time at the right place? Then the second piece was engagement, because we realized that in a place like a pandemic, you can have all the ideas, you can have all the ability, and you may have all the skills, but if you don't have the right motivation, and if you're not engaged, you're not going to do anything. You're just going to okay, whatever. but you have it, you have the capabilities, the motivation, the ideas, and everything. So how and engagement is very scary because in Malaysia, right, it says that 76% of employees are disengaged in our country. Now the globally it's like 78. Slightly better, 72, I think, or 73. I mean, so it's like 24% of Malaysians are what we call actively disengaged. Actively disengaged, meaning you're practically sabotaging the company, right? Which is very scary, which means you're paying people to come in and sabotage your company, right? And that's a quarter of your company, And you say, how can our engagement levels be so horrendous? But you start to realize that, again, what people expect and what you give them is completely two different things. So people expect just-in-time engagement. If I have a problem, I want my manager to get engaged with me during that problem. If I am feeling sad, my manager needs to brighten my day immediately. Now, you as a manager, like, that's impossible. How can I manage all these people, right? But then, if you have the right intelligence, if you have technology, actually it's possible, right? But we use things like Gallup, which is 12 questions you ask, and then 1 month later, you get the results, and then 3 months later, you sit down and analyze it, and then finally, 6 months later, you launch and say, okay, here's the actions. Now, 6 months have gone, possibly people's mindsets, beliefs, the shift. There's a complete shift in what they were thinking or feeling at that point in time, right? So to me, I think companies need to start really thinking about these two areas. In addition to those pieces, I think those are very important. You need to relook at your business. You need to have that. I love cost consciousness and all these things that you mentioned. But I think sometimes when we do those things right and we don't see results, it's usually predicated on two things. I don't have a learning organization, meaning I'm learning, you're unlearning, relearning, and changing, right? And the second piece is, do you have real engagement in your organization? Because you can only move levers. You can only say, to our guys, look, Andrea, I want you to do this, right? And they will do it, right? If there's engagement, if there's trust, if there's a connection, right? And those things don't happen unless there is a concerted effort to do that. So as a company, we decided, look, we just want to focus on these two things. And the best part is, because of all the technology, well, Google does that, right? They read your email, and then they tell you, oh, you want to go for a holiday in Bali, boom, all the ads for Bali will come out, right? Why can't learning be the same, right? Why can't, you get an email on budgeting, right? Oh, but we say your title is HR. Oh, straight away I give you information. Here's how you do your budget, right? It's possible, right? It's already happening, right? How do we enable that to happen at an organizational level? And then how do we enable engagement to happen? So I think if you use those two levels, I think are very important for us as SME CEOs to understand what's the learning in my organization, what's the engagement, real engagement in my organization. I think we can get those two, combine it with some of the practical business reinvention processes. You will definitely be able to not just pivot, you'll be very, very successful in this day and age.
Brilliant. Thank you both of you for these excellent insights. We're going to keep you up here because you both look great on stage, and we're going to pivot for a little bit in terms of our content. We're going to invite Richard Su up to take a seat and drive us through what is going on with the Plateau program. We heard a bit about it earlier. I think you've got some slides for us as well. For those who are looking to get involved in the Plateau program, this is where you start taking. It's where you start to get a battery in your microphone and you start taking notes of what's going on with this program. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Nadine. So this morning I'll run through our 8 project, and also we'll talk a little bit about Platter, which is actually our experiential food hall on level 1. And I'll end up with running through a little bit about the Platter Accelerator program. So quick introduction on 8 the experiential journey. Basically, in the project in 8 there are 4 main components. If you can see on the slide here, we have actually the Blender residence. The 2 towers on the right, tower A and B, essentially these are Blender residence, and also they are serviced by Kempinski. Kempinski Hotel is actually the tower on the leftmost, and these are actually the first Kempinski Hotel in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So there are 3 towers, and we have a last component, which is the hotel podium on the ground floor. So as you can see that the project is located directly in the Golden Triangle, somewhere between KLCC as well as Pavilion. It's directly across from Pavilion. There is also a Conley MRT which is slated to open sometime in 2022. The MRT is about maybe 200 meters short walk away from the project. And so basically, it is actually very well located and can be accessed by major roads next to the MRT and between the Golden Triangle where you got Bukit Bintang, Lot 10, Sungai, and the other area obviously is KLCC, Twin Towers, and the KLCC Park. Next. So for us, like Joanne mentioned, we are a lifestyle developer, and when we conceive of this Economy project, I think the first thing is to look for collaborators, partners who will work with us when we conceive of the project. And every building, obviously, the first person we talk about is actually the architect. But we made a conscious decision that when we conceive of this project, we wanted to work with a local Malaysian architect. And we actually worked with a gentleman called Baka. He's actually the principal architect in RSP. So he is actually with us from day one when we conceive of the project, including the design, and finally now we are actually under construction. Next, the next partner we have is actually Steve Leong. Both for the Tower A and Tower B service residents, we work with you, which is actually an international brand in lifestyle interior design. And Steve Leong himself is actually a very celebrated figure which is based in Hong Kong and very well known in China and is very, very much sought after. So he is actually the ID designer that we are working with for Tower A. Next. For Tower B, we decided to look towards UK and Europe, and we work with Kelly Hoppen. Again, both Steve Leong and Kelly Hoppen, they are part of the U brand of interior designers, and he's located in UK and also very much sought after for all the clients in UK as well as in Europe. Next, building a colony in the urban jungle in KL, I think landscape is very important. So we are also very fortunate to be able to work with Trop Studios. Pok actually based in Bangkok, and he's also one of the first Asian to be awarded by the American Society of Landscape Architects. So that's very rare. And he understands about having lots of greenery, lush greenery in the urban context. And that itself is something that we want to introduce and implement in Ecolay. Next. So the last but not the least, obviously, is our hotel operator, Kempinski. Again, from day one, when we conceive of a project, we have actually very fortunate to be able to work with Kempinski to come in as the hotel operator for Tower C. So I'll go a little bit about on the experiential space. So for the first level one, for the palette, when we look at the space, I think the whole retail concept has shifted, especially since the pandemic has hit us. And we are no longer talking about just a retail tenant where you go in, you get your products, you buy your stuff, and then you go off. I think the public are also getting more sophisticated. They know what they want, but at the same time, they actually expect a little bit more. So the whole experience about going into the retail space, learning something, taking part in the experience, that are actually what some of the things that actually the public are looking for. So when we conceive of the whole retail concept for the retail podium, the experiential portion of it is actually very important, and we wanted to introduce and integrate it in all the levels. So in particular, when we talk about palette, which is the experiential food hall in level 1, the platter. So the whole experience is actually very important to us. Next. So these are some visuals that we have developed for the retail podium, and the platter actually is located on level 1. And as part of the architectural expression, as we work with RSP, some of the architectural elements that we wanted to work on and to actually introduce in the project are so like the showcase lift, the pod, the cube, as well as all the rooftop external spaces. Next. So these are some of the visuals branding which my colleague John will actually elaborate a little bit more, how we actually do the branding for the platter experience. Next. Yeah, so again, very similar to retail, the culinary world itself has evolved and shifted, where you don't really go into a space just to enjoy the food, but the whole experience of it, the culinary experience is also important to each and every customer that comes in. And in Platter, what we wanted to do is actually to build a community of F&B experience, meaning that people who come in and enjoy the food, and also people who actually produce and cook. So we also look at, for the food hall, a lot of the time they're very busy during meal times like lunch, dinner, maybe tea. But the rest of the time is considered like a downtime where nobody goes there. And so to us, the experience going to a food hall is not just about the food, but there are actually programs, workshops, maybe there's a cooking classes. And these are the people that we are actually curating a group of like-minded F&B operators that work with us, not just creating the food, but the experience as well as the learning experiences that you get from that. And these are all some of the visuals that we actually are working on in terms of the menu, the look and feel of the whole platter that we are developing. So in short, I think some of the key highlights for platter, there are four main areas that we wanted to work towards achieving when we actually roll out platter. I think a new dining experience, because it's about getting a group of friends together, enjoying the experience, also enjoying the food. Contemporary cuisines, I think, like we have mentioned earlier, I think food is actually a common thing that we have for all Asian cultures. Everybody loves food. Everybody has their own story to tell. You know, this is my favorite restaurant, the whole in the world that I want to show my friends. And if you can actually curate some of these F&B operators in the same space, then that's where you can actually show your friends, the place that you can go with your friends to enjoy the food and to showcase to them, you know, these are all the local food that you can get in one place. Transformative day to night, like I mentioned earlier, food hall typically has ups and downs, right? So what happened in between meal times? What happened in the space? How do you actually maximize the return of the space and actually use it to actually create more programs and experiences for the public? Last but not least, design journey. I think we are not looking to just have a tenant and also the landlord relationship, but we're actually building a community, reaching out to the market now, looking for partners to come and join us in the program so that when the platter is open, then we already have a community that we have worked together in developing the concept. Next. So what is the Accelerator project? So I'll quickly run through what are the key aspects and what are the things that you can actually enjoy as part of the program. Next. Basically five. I think the first, of course, for each accelerator program that you that people to join, you can actually get a loan of up to about 100,000. We have industry mentoring. So depending on the actual participants for the platter accelerator, we will actually curate a list of mentors that actually work together with the accelerator program. So technical support, I think we also talk a little bit about that. We want to have the F&B operators to focus on what they do best, curating the food, the menu. But in running an SME, there are a lot of other support that you need, like for example, your admin, your finance, you know, how to write a business proposal, how to get a loan, right, how to scale your businesses. So for us in KSKLN, these are some of the things that we do every day. And we felt that actually as a partner looking for a partnership, these are the things that we can actually support and also to help the F&B SME to grow. Of course, the last, the number four is also ideas on a global stage. So the key aspect of joining the Accelerator program is also to take up a space in Platter when we open and be part of the community when we launch Platter to the market. And the last one is, of course, the space in Platter. So essentially, that is actually the five aspects of the Accelerator program.
Thank you very much, Richard. Now, when I look at some of the photos of some of the design.
Of course, you must have a very compelling and interesting F&B concept. And also you must have a very compelling and interesting branding for your F&B. And because as an accelerator program, we want to be able to find partners that are already in the business, running your program for at least 2 years with a break-even P&L, meaning that you are successfully running breaking even for a minimum of 2 years, but you want to take your business to the next stage. You want to grow, right? That's where you join and apply to the accelerator program. And we also want to be able to work closely with the founder because to us, it's not just about the business or the F&B itself, but really it's about building partnership and building relationship. So the founder who started this concept, F&B concept, is very important to us that, okay, you share the vision, you understand what Ecolate is about, you understand what Platter is about, and you want to grow your business, take it to the next level, and that's it. Come talk to us, and then you can actually see whether you can work with us on the program.
Uh, yeah. Correct. So typically in accelerator programs, people actually already have, a fixed roster. And then they have this fixed roster of, okay, who are their mentors? And then, people get excited about them and they put them together. For KSKLN, actually, we decided to take an approach where it was a little bit more curated. So we want to see actually we actually want to curate. So today we have about already, I think we launched it a month or so ago, and then today we have already about 50 applicants, and then there are also some foreign F&Bs that are coming in, but we're giving priorities to the Malaysians, of course, because one is that we're at the heart of the city, and we realize that a lot of interesting F&Bs that are already around are actually in the peripherals and actually not in the city center. Why not? Rents are high, things are tough, it's a lot to think about for the SMEs. So we wanted to actually try to bridge that gap, which is why, there is this, obviously the first pillar. Coming back to your question also about mentorship, yes, I mean, if under the list of what they want, because obviously we tell them if you apply into the accelerator program and there are certain mentorship topics that you would want, say how to grow your business, or how do I actually maybe want to nurture my team so that I can grow together with my team, then yes, of course, we're always there, and I'm always there, and we can always have these kind of conversations because I always believe, even for me personally, it's not just about what I can give. I think it's a win-win relationship, and whatever that, the SMEs and especially the F&Bs, I can also learn from them as much as they can learn from me. So I think it's always a two-way relationship. And sometimes, there's a lot of things that we can remember that they will remind us of, especially in our businesses. And then, yes, there's also an array of mentorship, like what Richard is saying. We actually have a huge network. If you can see, we collaborate with a lot of people because we're a lifestyle developer. So throughout our journey, we're always meeting a lot of new designers, a lot of new culinary guys. We work very closely with Kempinski. We've got Alvin Leong coming into Conley. So if you're an F&B, you would know Alvin Leong as well. So I mean, there are a lot of different diverse group of people that we have, and at any point when if one day they said we need mentorship, I think we met a few people already. We had one round of pitching, so we had people telling us, I want marketing advice. I want to understand how I can actually elevate my brand, how to be a little bit more relevant, how to educate people about my brand, So for us, okay, fine, we have that expertise because that's something that we constantly do. That's something that every time we have a different development, we would look at how to actually, again, reinforce new ideas or reinforce new journeys to people. And that's what we know, and that's what we can give. So if it's something, we have another person who came into the program and said, okay, I'm not very good with my numbers, but I know my revenue, I know my sales. Okay, that's also something that we constantly do all the time. So why not, give them the template, teach them how to run those modeling, and then we go from there. So I think Accelerator for us is about accepting people into the program and really growing with them. And let's see how it goes, right? It's always in iterations. What works best for them and for us, it's something that we have to focus on.
Thank you, Joanne. We'll get to branding a little bit more. I know Jonathan's going to give us a through in a short while, but Roshan, what would your advice be for SMEs who are considering expanding during this time of crisis, this time of adversity? Coming back to our overall theme of the day, where is the opportunities, and especially in the F&B sector?
I thought I'm done, so
I saw you relaxing, and I was like, no way.
you could get me back to work. No, but I think everyone is going to be unique, right? I think what Joanne said is very true, right? You got to understand what our core competence is, right? So we see companies like Nokia from rubber boots pivoting into digital phones and so on and so forth. And we've seen that kind of crazy pivots that happen. But I think what we all need to understand is we need to be very clear what is our strengths, what are our core capabilities as an organization, and then have a big enough worldview. If you have enough learning and your employees are engaged enough to see the whole world as it is, you will be able to understand what opportunities lie and then compare that with your core capability and figure out, okay, is this a jump that we can reasonably make? Now, I always say SMEs, we always, my employees, we will be, maybe I'll pick on my employees since, they always will tell you, this is unrealistic, this is realistic, right? And then occasionally they say impossible, right? So basically what they mean is that when something is realistic, it means it's very comfortable. I can do it. Anyone can do it, right? And usually every employee wants to do things that are realistic, right? Now they'll tell you, oh, this one is unrealistic, right? I just told the team, hey, Nicole is so good. We want to get 100,000 people on Nicole by December 31st. Oh, that's unrealistic. What they really mean is it's not as unrealistic. It's very hard work. Unrealistic means hard work, meaning that somebody has done it. I'm sure there's some organization that's got 100,000 users on an app. So it's not impossible, but it's a lot of hard work. That's unrealistic. And the third category is impossible. So it's like, oh, we need to go into the business of creating a time machine so we can go back in time and stop COVID in China. And so when you talk about, so there are three categories, right? Impossible, right? It just cannot be done, right? So I looked at my business and said, what's impossible for us to do? Okay, what is unrealistic, which is hard work, right? Possible, but a lot of hard work. That's why it's unrealistic to most people. And what is realistic? Most of the time, we tend to go towards the realistic. So I would challenge all of us to start thinking about the unrealistic category. Look at your business in an unrealistic way, not an impossible way. Like, don't bother about doing things that cannot be done, right? Based on your capability, based on all the things that we talked about, right? How do you look at your business and say, what can I do that is somewhat challenging, that is somewhat hard, and then make that jump, right? So we all tend to, we like the realistic because it's achievable, right? But the unrealistic is where you want to get to, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. With that, now I know what's realistic and difficult and challenging and impossible in the realm of branding. So get up here, and if I could get in your microphone, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. You can tell he's in branding because he gets to show up in a t-shirt in front of the boss, and it's okay. so Jonathan, over to you.
Okay, for the role of branding in Platter in general, it wasn't easy, honestly. Branding, as I always work very closely with Joanne, has been a very challenging concept to grasp for anybody. When we ask somebody, do you understand what branding is, what it means to you, never the same answers for everyone, and that's where branding truly stands. People see things and absorb brands differently. So our role was to really communicate a brand that people would understand and agree upon. And as Joanne has mentioned, that would be community for our platter. How strong community, the idea of community is right now in today's social standing is impeccable, actually. With what's happening with the pandemic, politically, everything, it's actually banded people more than ever. How consumers are actually looking at brands, how brands are communicating with consumers, it's stronger than ever as we see now. People want some sort of relatability to brands, and that's taking over every other mega brands you see right now. Why cult brands are becoming the new it thing. Why cult brands are being modeled by mega brands right now. It says something a lot of where we're at. So with that in mind, when we conceptualize Platter, it was definitely not to be like, let's just be like that brand. This is what people are doing now, let's do that. We cleared everything out. We just said, let's do something people are not doing at all, and show them that want to actually communicate to them a story that they didn't really know they wanted, but actually wanted. I think that's where we become really competitive as a brand, when we're able to show people that there's something there that they've always wanted that they did not realize. And hence this community feeling of just pure talents in Platter that we're actually talking to right now. And of course, some that have already signed on with us already. These people are not easy for sure, because they're all so talented. Uh, and so they have very different minds, different idea. And to be able to be on that wavelength with them is not easy for everybody, even them and with us, because we have high talents and creative people in KSK as well. So finding that middle ground was very interesting in the past 6 months. Yeah, while we're doing this during the pandemic, and the fact that we were able to even have a conversation with them and get to where we are at now is a story to really tell in our whole Platter our brand right now. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Now, Jonathan, you've got this kind of basket of very good food producers in Malaysia. All companies like this kind of, over the years. But how are you going to bring them, in a sense, to develop and make it acceptable or part of this global experience, global lifestyle experience that this whole company promises to deliver for, in a sense, for the first time in Malaysia? How is that going to brand?
So it's not a trend, but what's happening right now in the world is a revival period because of everything that's happening. So during revival periods that would span, I think Herman Schmidt has always said that this sort of period lasts a decade or so. And when that happens in revival periods, you see where people are looking at when it comes to absorbing communication materials or relating to a brand. So currently that is kopitiams. You see everywhere kopitiams in Asia right now, actually just small eateries booming with like a new contemporary revival, refresh in what they do, in the way they tell the story and the outlook of the space. But at the same time, keeping the food as how you like it, your nasi lemak, your kaya toast every day. And you see in Europe as well. Europe is going through a revival period with the whole Scandi Nordic eateries that are smaller, but just going back to that idea of close farming and things like that. So we are going through this revival period. It's going to last for at least 20 more years. And Platter is created in that sense that we are able to tap into that story with everyone that we're talking to right now, and then at the same time evolve it as as the world changes. It's not going to be one thing forever, definitely. Better, it's going to constantly evolve. And we always believe here at KSK, me and Joanne always say, a really, really strong brand is not a brand that is just set in its way, but a brand that is able to constantly adapt and evolve and communicate just really well with the people. Yeah.
Now, Joanne, before I open it up for people online as well as people in the crowd here today, how are you as an entrepreneur, as a business person, helping people with that journey? I hear a very emotional kind of journey that these people will have to go on, from sharing their good food, it could be grandmother's recipes passed down. Now we need to get it to that level. How is that journey for you? How is that journey going to be like?
I think what we do best is communicating that journey. It's a holistic one. And when you come aboard Platter, this is a little bit of the relationships that I'm talking about, right? Typically in a tenant and landlord, okay, you come in and you do your business, I do my business, and every month let's just tally up numbers. For us, it's a lot more than that. That's why, when we even started Platter, we started with branding, because branding is about a story. And when we onboard the people who are coming into Platter, first and foremost, we always ask, are you going to be interested in this story and this journey that we are going with? Because we're not going at it alone, we're going to go at it with you. like John said, I believe that every business is evolving. We evolve, and I think that every single entrepreneur, even from all the FMBs that are going to join us in Platter, are going to have their own journey. But their journey is also synonymous to us when they're in Platter, meaning when we talk about communities, it's about having conversations. So it's not just about, when you're in this space, I look at you, you look at me. It's like, we're like neighbors in a neighborhood, right? And occasionally you have your town hall meetings or whatever, and then you come and then you have this conversation. What has worked for me might have not worked for you. And those are all the shared learnings that they are going to come on this journey with us. I'll give you an example. I think one of the people who came to pitch to us recently, this founder, she has a huge passion for milk, fresh milk. We sat down as a team and listened to her talk about fresh milk for 1 hour. And for me, it was like, was there something to learn? Yes, there was definitely something to learn for all of us, and why were we so patiently sitting down listening to her talk about milk for 1 hour? It was because we wanted to understand her story. Why are you so passionate about this product? Where have you gone so far in this journey? How can we help you build that journey further? Then we realized we are also those audience. We are the audience that's going to be the same audience that's going to be in Platter and enjoying the meal. So how can we then help her to communicate this product that she's so passionate about? How can we allow people to engage for 1 hour? Because most of the time people don't have that patience. 1 hour to sit down to listen to you about milk, that's not easy to do. So how can we help her to do this in 10 minutes? That's something that she told us, okay, I'm lack of it. That's the word marketing, right? I don't know how to market my product. What is marketing? Marketing and branding is synonymous. It's not something that you see visually and something that you say in 10 minutes or even in a split seconds in today's world. And it's something that, I understand. So I think she's going through that same journey as us that we went through. We have found our secret recipe, and let's help her find her secret recipe. And when she has found her secret recipe, that's where the whole platter will then evolve. If you can imagine 25 people in that space, okay, all creative in their food. And if you put them all together and they start talking to each other in that diversity, there's a strength in diversity. They start to feed off each other. And that comes back to my point about inspired innovation, something that, is very personal to me, because that's how I personally learn and grow. As CEOs, it's very difficult to ask somebody to teach you something. And everybody around me teaches me something every day. And hopefully that impact will have, that they will have the same impact in Platter. And to Richard's point is that then we can try something new. So there's the soft sides to Platter, is that, when you put a whole bunch of people together, can you come up with something interesting? If we say, hey, every Sunday we want to do a family event, it's impossible, I think, to say, or maybe to your word, there's a lot of hard work that will come from us only. So how about if all 25 of us come out? There's 25 weekends, there's 25 Sundays, 25 new ideas. So I think that's something that I imagine it's going to happen in Platter. And that's how we keep it sustainable, right? When things and content keeps changing over time. And the branding for Platter becomes the frame for us to actually play within the space. Okay, if I can give an example, deviating a little bit, probably the model that actually we disrupted in our example is really the insurance business. Before we were KSK Group, we were called Kunia Insurance. So I think everybody knows us. We're a homegrown brand. Branding is obviously very important to us. So we realized actually over the course of the years, technology was coming in. Understanding the space very, very well, we decided what are we going to do about ourselves? You know, we're a very large corporate spanning in the region. But we also realized that there were a lot of breaks in the market. The fundamental of insurance was really providing covers to customers and understanding when they need us. But we then had, you know, a lot of intermediaries, and a lot of people thought, okay, we understood the customers, but actually, in fact, over the course of many, many years, we don't understand the customers anymore. But we needed to understand the customers because that's the way we actually price their risks and actually cover them for who they are. But with where the world is heading to, what customers today really want is personalization. We're personalizing everything, right? Even today, I think we're already starting to think in KSK and how do we personalize properties for people? Because that's actually a very hard thing to do when you're building brick and mortar. In insurance, that's what we did basically. So that's why we gave birth to Sunday. We couldn't do it within the company because, like what Roshan said, sometimes it's all about change and that courage to actually change. And so what we did was that we did it outside of the business using technology. And now, 2 years on, we have an insurtech, a full stack insurtech called Sunday. It's a licensed insurtech. We started it in Thailand. And, you know, we use AI and machine learning actually to price products and actually all the way to actually claims. You know, today we actually use image recognition, machine learning data to actually look at the damages and how much that's going to cost us. At the same time, you know, we work with people like DTAC, Lazada, Grab, you know, they are all our partners. And we price products in actually 2-week cycles, just purely using data. And then communicating with the customer and going B2B. Then we use the data to price the products. And then we spend time with using humans to actually connect with the customers instead. And I think that those two are actually very important. So technology then becomes an enabler for us. So I think as a business, you know, when you want to disrupt your own business, it's not an easy journey to take because it's something that you're saying that what I've known for 20 odd years is now going to be obsolete. How do I actually change myself? To come to that conclusion is definitely not an easy journey for anybody. But I think it's something that we would have to go through that motion. How do we evolve? Then the word that we started using instead of disruption was really evolve, you know, to evolve ourselves all the time. We're changing into a different animal. And that goes the same for the products that we create to the customers, the way we speak to the customers from marketing perspective, and the way we are being perceived by the customer, which is actually branding, you know. So it really takes the whole span. Even for KSK, we've actually evolved our brand like now, I think 3 times over. In the course of being a CEO for the last 8 years, I've actually evolved the branding of the group 3 times over to the same set of customers because they are changing. We're changing and they're changing. It's synonymous.
Lovely, thank you, Joanne. I got one question, and it's kind of related also to some of the stuff that you were saying earlier, Jonathan, about branding and how will those SMEs take advantage of branding in Plata, and kind of what is the Accelerator program look like for branding?
I think it really depends on each individual. Out of the 25 people, there could be some whose biggest strength is operations, or their food's like the strongest strength. And then some, you know, maybe less on operations, but their storytelling is compelling. So normally the one who are a little bit weaker on the story would benefit a lot from us because we're able to really mentor them into how you're going to communicate your story effectively. How are you going to be a part of this with us and, you know, tell your story to a wider audience that you've not spoken to before. So, and that in its sense is part of the Accelerator Challenge, where we are able to guide them and mentor them in this sense as well.
Brilliant. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by questions. Okay. And this is, I'll get to that one in a second. But I want to kind of get more on in a sense of how will you take an SME and say, okay, you've got this story. How are you also going to marry the data? And we see now the kind of change, when we see like people delivering food, people delivering that. Is there also, and it just popped into my mind also that, you're going to be part of a huge property development. How close, are those SMEs going to be able to, like, in a sense, send food, to the people inside that development? And what's that, I'm thinking, there's like really good food downstairs, and I can say, we're not going, to KLCC for dinner tonight. We're just going to go downstairs. What's that kind of dynamic you guys are going to create there?
So the sense of community that we are also creating, and this entire journey and experience it begins from before even discovering us, how they discover us, to how they get to know us, coming into our place to experience everything and being able to access from their homes in our own hotels. The hotel room, as our hotel guests as well, be able to order if they want to, go down to experience the space, or order the food right to their hotel rooms or our entire residence. They could order or go down. Everything we're able to provide them this entire experience, solely because it goes back to that sense of community. We want them to feel like everyone knows each other. It's small. We're gonna always provide for you, and that's really part of this, to answer your question.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I like putting you on the spot because you're so casual today. But it's cool. Now, Roshan, I also noticed you're getting distracted as well. That I would have. Now, how important is community post-COVID-19? How important will it be for revenue generation? The Richard circumstances, how viable is this business? Are you going to say to people, how viable?
I think one of the things that we tend to forget is that let's talk about learning and engagement, right? Learning and engagement can only happen really effectively in a communal environment. Grieving can only happen in a communal environment. You realize that why we have funerals and why we gather people together to grieve together. Communal interaction is absolutely critical for us to overcome grief, for us to learn, for us to grow, for us to engage, right? And one of the things that's very interesting, if you watch Social Dilemma, for example, and the fact that we all aggregate towards communities like Facebook groups and so on and so forth, and yet at the same time, when you are not paying for something, you are the product, right? So I mean, obviously, and so how do you build communities without having a side intent, right? And so we're going to see some transformation happen, right? Because obviously people are starting to get aware that, hey, I'm the product here. So the community is not for me. The community is essentially something else. So how do we, and one of the things we talked about is Nicole, right? How do we build communities where people really learn, where people really share with each other, where people really push each other, where people motivate, where people engage with each other so that we can all get to a higher playing field. And that's what communities do. Good communities do that, right? Good neighborhoods keep neighborhoods safe. There's a theory called the broken window theory. Whenever you see a broken window in a neighborhood, fix it quickly. But if the community allows one broken window, soon there'll be two, there'll be three, and soon the whole community will be dilapidated, right? So community is absolutely critical for everything. And as a think about SMEs, right? The bigger our communities that we can build around us, the stronger we become. The bigger we can figure out how to engage and enable these communities to be successful, right? The more likely we are going to be engaged by these communities, the more we're going to be used by these communities, the more we will be part of these communities. And that's the key to business here. And I think that's where we will start to see divergent happen because of Social Dilemma with the Facebooks. And business models are going to change, right? People are saying, look, I'm willing to pay to be part of a better community, right? And then that's where opportunity like this is where SMEs in Malaysia need to say, hey, we need to be the first guy forward to start building things like this to enable communities to thrive in a free a way that enables each other to build each other up in a systemic way. Sure. So one of the things I think that's you know, when you look at the data of how learning and learning is changing, right? We started to say that we wanted to go digital, but when we went to digital, of course, you know, just like I suspect Joanne, you know, when you first go in, you think we follow what everybody's doing. Let's build a learning management system, right? So that's what we did. We built an LMS, and then we realized, you know, engagement rate is like 2%. Nobody's, you know, how many of you have signed up for a Coursera course or Udemy course and actually finish the course, right? You'll find about 2% in the world that do that, right? So how can it be so horrible? Like you put tools and content, but only 2% use it. And so we realized that it's not just learning, it's not just putting out content, right? You need to figure out engagement. You need to figure out how people working together and go back to this community piece. How do you enable communities to thrive? And so that's where we started to say we wanted to build something, we call this Clayton, which is CLAYTON, contextual learning at your time of needs. And the first part to it is how do we get all the best content in the world together? And that's why we built Nicole, which is needs-based contextual learning, NECOLE. So Nicole's a tool to be able to get a lot of the best content in the world, re-tag it or reread it, let the computer read it, right? So the computer reads it, the computer tags it, and we bring it back. And now we understand who you are based on the intelligence that we gather, and we start bringing the right content to you at the right time and right space. So like you said, you need to create personalized feeds. You need to create personalized housing. You also need to create personalized learning. You need to create personalized engagement. And so that's what the journey was right, really trying to take us from a point where we were doing these interactions like this, you know, big groups, right? But how do I make it personalized to you? So we can have something like this, but then I follow up with you and say, hey, today the insight you picked up was this. How do we take this deeper? How do we go and explore deeper? And that's been our digital journey. And we're still learning because now Nicole, one thing that was fantastic about Nicole, and you can all download your own Nicole actually. We just launched the B2C version, but Nicole's engagement is about 30+%, which means more than 30% of people who are using it will get deeply engaged with it. Now the MOOCs, what we call learning management systems and MOOCs are still about 2 to 3%. So we think, hey, we've got something that's 10 times better, but still it's 30%. How do we get to 50? How do we get to 70? How do we get 100? Now that's a journey that we'll continue taking, and we'll get there. But at least I know that we are progressing in the right direction. And so digital journey is a lot about testing, a lot about experimentation. Keep the focus on getting to 100, but we'll get there slowly. So and 30%, being a Malaysian company with that tech, it gives us a lot of delight to say that, hey, you know, we are going to get there soon, and we'll get there at some point in time.
Keep going, keep going. Okay, we've got a question over here.
Hi, I think this question is more for Joanne and Bridget. In terms of the class program, you know, there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to be applying, and so I know you're saying that you want a unique concept and things like that, but is there any extra hints that you can provide for, you know, aspiring businesses that are applying? You know, what's going to really, what are you going to
I think when we look at all the applicants, we don't really have anything fixed in mind, meaning that you must be like nasi lemak or you must look like this. Even like what Joanne mentioned, we actually sat through 1 hour of a lady telling us about milk. You know, she's passionate about it. So to us, the thing that actually gets our attention really is the founder's passion, right? And the founder's passion in what he or she does and her story. And we find that if there's a lot of potential in actually building up the story, evolving it, and actually also very important that it has to be aligned with the concept of palette and equally. So to everybody out there, I think just reach out to us. We have an open mind, and as long as you're passionate about what you do, you have a very compelling storyline, then we're happy to hear from you.
And of course, the food has to be good.
So if there was a, if you could give me a real example of any of the restaurants
In fact, even as of now, we are talking to a chain of restaurants based out of Bangkok, and they actually have been working on Thai food. Right? Everybody loves Thai food, but to them, actually, they are very innovative and they actually constantly creating products. And a good example is that during the pandemic, when it strikes, a lot of these SMEs have problems because they typically have very small restaurants or even a kiosk. But this particular restaurant that they're working with, the founder was actually very creative. During this pandemic, he basically worked with a lot of hotels or even Michelin star chefs to create a takeaway box, right? And where he created a specific menu with fried chicken and with some of the Thai salad. And this, in fact, the way he marketed it is that because of this pandemic, this actual product will only be available for about maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So it becomes like a limited edition thing that you can try. And when he rolled out this program, I think he sold out and he couldn't even keep up with the production to really satisfy all the demands. So what we're trying to say is that we want to work with passionate founders at the same time that actually they are also very creative and response to the environment, response to the context.
I think first, Acorn is definitely a branded development, but I think it's a misconception that when you are in the retail space, it doesn't mean that it's a space only very expensive things can happen. I always say when you create a retail experience, it's an experience that we imagine it to be a very lively experience. You don't want to walk into a retail space and can hear a pin drop. Whether you have the money or you don't have the money, you'd be afraid to go in because everybody will be staring at you. And I think that is a movement that is now global. Even the most fine dining experiences are now going casual, purely because they want to focus on the food. They want to focus on the people on the table. They want to focus on the community. And that is happening everywhere around the world. And I think that is the one place, whether you're very rich or whether you're very poor, is the one place that actually everybody converges together. In Malaysia, whether you're rich or you're poor, you still eat your char kway teow and your nasi lemak. And you can have a 50 ringgit nasi lemak, you can have a 5 ringgit nasi lemak. You will still eat it. What's different is actually the experience that people are providing. In food halls, the movement of food halls that has just happened, it's not just in Malaysia, it's actually global and it's coming. For us in Malaysia, food halls is not new. It's something that we've already had, like what John was mentioning. It's the kopitiams that you typically go to. It's the hawker stores that you typically go to. They are all food halls, just of different nature. Someone like me would want to go for different experiences. I want to still go to my local hawker store, to the uncle that I always know that sells me my kway teow soup, just that the price has now shifted, inflated. Now tomorrow I feel like I want to go and have brunch with my friends. So I'm going to go to a different space. It doesn't mean whether you're rich or you're poor or you can afford it or you cannot afford it. you don't want to have a new experience. But that's what why food halls are attractive globally, is because you could walk into a food hall and buy a cup of coffee. You could walk into a food hall and buy a bottle of beer. You could also go into a food hall and eat all the different foods that are on the table, and you don't have to be in a specific restaurant. And that it would be a space where there will be live music playing, and a space where, there will be an art event going next door. And so you will not feel alienated. And I think that that's something that we want to create. So in our retail space, we imagine and we welcome actually everybody from all walks, and therefore it's an experiential space. It's not a space that you just come and buy your necessity and just walk out. It's a space that you want a new experience, and you want to walk out remembering that experience or creating a memory with somebody. And that is really important to us. So it doesn't mean that in Platter, we have expensive foods. That's not, I think, the intention actually. The intention is you could be charging 2 ringgit, you could be charging 5 ringgit. That depends on your revenue business model that you want to create, and we will help you look at your numbers. But more important is that compelling story that you're telling with your food. When you create your own coffee, we talk to coffee roasters and where the coffee comes from, and some of them are so passionate about sustainability of the coffee and things like that. And that's what we like, because that's what we believe would connect with the customers. And I think that that's a trend, or at least a movement that's moving forward. People want to know your story. A coffee cup is not just a coffee cup anymore today. I think for a lot of people, it's the conversation that you have with the coffee in front of you. And that's why food halls today around the world has become very, very interesting, and why food halls today around the world has now become very urban and all in city centers. And I think that, a city like KL deserves to have one as well.